It is Thursday, April 17th, 2025. I'm Grantham Taylor Hughes for my show, The Grantham Taylor Hughes Show, with my guest host, Lena Suzanne Z. How are you doing, Lena?
I'm good, thanks, Grantham. How are you?
I'm just fine, thank you. Now, see, we sort of laugh a little bit because before pre-talk, we're joking around a lot, get loosened up for the show. So people always wonder, why is everything so funny in the beginning, right? So, well, because Lena tells really good jokes.
I do.
So you're quite the comedian. I say comedian nowadays. Anyway, so what we were talking about the didacticism of language and communication and metaphors and just life in itself is really a concept. And it's really, there's really the reality to it being in English grammar, they call it the denotation, the thing in itself. It's like, we're sitting at a table right now and the definition of this wooden piece with four legs on it. Hopefully it has four so it won't topple over, right? So you could have a triangle, like a triangle anyway. So, so that you call it a table. It's defined as a table, right? So that is your definition or name. It's a title of a wooden platform with four legs on it, right? We call it a table. All right. So now that word of itself is defined as that. We call it that because that's we label it. It's like a label for our understanding of what it is that we communicate about the table, right? So without that, then we don't know what the thing is in itself. So that becomes the discussion. And see how different it is. And I remember we were talking about group entities and things of that nature. Like
Mm,
when we were talking about it, it was a little bit simpler, but now it's even getting more complex
yeah.
once we start speaking to the public. It's a different group consciousness type thing. So, so in this discussion, the nuances of language or people are concerned about it because we were going to talk a little bit today about public speaking, and because it's the biggest fear that the Earth people have in reference to their fears, the biggest fear. They do a an inquiry with the New York Times, and they divined that the first fear that man has is public speaking. I think we've talked a little bit about that, but not extensively.
Mm.
And it's an irony because we're public speaking right now, and then we're concerned. People are concerned about doing that practice. And I remember many years ago when I was a much younger person, I was very frightened of public speaking, like most people. But I realized I needed to force myself because I knew somewhere along the line I would be having to have to do it. See, so I was very nervous. My knees were shaking, my voice was quavering, and I hated the whole thing because I felt very self-conscious. So that's the key to the whole thing is people don't want to get up there because they're self-conscious of making errors or being uncomfortable. See, so they're out of their comfort zone. People want to get into a comfort zone and don't want to go out of that comfort zone because what? Because it's uncomfortable and it's embarrassing. There's a word for called labefaction. They don't want to wax labefaction in terms of embarrassment and feeling embarrassed because that's a not a good feeling that people have. So they would prefer to be in their comfort area, comfort zone, as they call it. I think the motivators talk a lot about that. And then in reference to how to help people be better public speakers, we used to take videos of people like we're doing now and take a video of people and they would give a 3 minute talk. They could read it or do extemporaneous if they wanted to. Very few people can do extemporaneous, and I've done that for years because after a while, after doing this thousands of times, I just threw away the notes because you should hold notes and read your notes, and after a while, you just don't use them anymore. So I just started winging it all the time, like we do our talks. Honestly, folks, we don't really. You probably can already tell that we
Um,
that we wing it, right?
So,
They say
Grantham,
they wing it, right? Yeah, go ahead.
how did you get from that point of being nervous and worried about making errors and fear of embarrassment to that place where you are now? Was it a process? Did you have to change your mindset, or how did it happen?
Well, just practice doing it a lot, and then you kind of let go of it. But like I said, when you see yourself on a video, like I've seen ourselves on these videos, It's not so bad. And when you see yourself on a video, you realize, oh, I'm not so bad after all, because you're afraid of the frontispiece of what you look like and what you sound like. And mainly, most people don't like their own voices, and I didn't for years. You still don't, actually, because it's not really disc jockey or a presenter type thing. But at the same time, we have a lot of information that's important to impart, and I wish people were talking about some of the things we talk about that they don't talk about. All right, having said that, somebody's got to get up to the podium and communicate things, you see, because they always say if nobody's there, anybody that steps up to the podium, they'll believe them. See, so our words are very powerful to people because they create impressions, they create imagery in people's mindset. See, so it's extraordinary how to get into this and talk about things, and people say, "Well, what's the subject?" Well, what subjects are that don't go off into vectors and parallel things? Like I'm always talking about, my main subject really is horizontal politics. Like it's across the board horizontally, pretty much anything can connect to each other. There's a segue pretty much to everything. It's like in the sciences when chemistry, physics, and geology, all these things, there's a segue into these things. Like medical science deals with a lot of chemistry and physics, right? But they say, oh, I'm a medical doctor. I'm allopathic medical doctor. I have a specialization. But they cross-reference all the time into things. So you can just call it science, right? Generalization. But like I have, my science is biochemopathy, which is a very advanced allopathy and homeopathy. It's more advanced than what they're doing. It's very, very complex, okay? And at the same time, I had to institute that about 12 years ago because in biochemistry and Antoine Béchamp, I didn't like his politics because he was into the gold standard, right? Now, what does gold standard have to do with medical science? It has a lot to do with that because when people have no money, they get sick. You know, it cross-references pretty easily. It segues into things. So what I did is because there had to be an apathy to biochemistry, I coined the term biochemopathy. See, so you have allopathy, you have homeopathy, you have biochemopathy, which are the three main sciences. There's other subroutines to the whole thing, but they overlap a great deal. Now that's interesting how I segued into that because
Yeah.
well, we're dealing with the group consciousness again. The entity wants precision, it wants certain things to be said, so I'm addressing that. And the public speaking would be something to do with your physical body, which is medical science, right? You see what I mean? And then why don't we teach people that speech is the ninth sense that we have in a sentient being? Why don't they talk about that in school? I mean, it's very important because they talk about being sentient, but I'm saying, well, explain to me what sentience is. If we have five senses, and then the New Agers talk about the 10th door and the top of the head, the crown chakra as being the 10th sense. What happened to six, seven, eight, and nine? And then they say, well, the sixth sense is telepathy. I say, well, I disagree with that. I don't think telepathy is really the sixth sense because we don't think alike because we're individuals. So that means that what is the sixth sense then? What's the sense of humor? Like they say extrasensory perception. Look at that term, extra sense. The extrasensory perception is your sense of humor. See, in ancient times, my Lama teachers taught me this. They taught me that the sixth sense is the sense of humor that we have. You see what I mean? So
Mhm.
it's not telepathy because we don't think alike. We think very differently, but we can laugh together, and that laughter is great. We need to laugh a lot more than what we do. That's why I have that on Mondays. I have the fun day, and we remember I was saying how I was trying to create a forum talking about raw veganism and diet. And then I started talking about, I was facilitating this call with many people on the call, and they were started laughing and joking around. I went, gosh, they weren't laughing at me about being raw vegan. They just started joking around on a side reel. Okay. And so I just threw up my hands and said, well, we'll just call it Fun Day because everybody's goofing off. See, it was goof off day. Let your hair down, laugh about things, and very wonderful people on the call. So you see, we need to have more fun in our lives, but it's hard when we're dealing with fears like public speaking. Hey, I got back to that. That was pretty
Yeah,
good.
yeah, very good. I wanted to ask, what advice have you got then for the viewers who might want to be more confident with public speaking and, want to
Yeah.
improve?
Mhm. Well, I think the mirror technique, I mean, people think that's funny to talk into the mirror, but it's very interesting on your own by yourself, talking to yourself in the mirror. You'll be surprised how difficult that can be if you're going on a dissertation. Like if you're going to go a long-winded discussion about something on a soliloquy, mainly. I've done StreamYard streaming videos. I've done about 100 of those, and I didn't have a co-host, so I had to do 30 minutes on my own. And that's people say, geez, how do you do that? I said, well, because I've done this for a long, long time. For better or for worse, I'm able to do it. And then I make jokes. I was making the joke about, oh, I'm running out of gas now on the StreamYard thing. I said, well, I guess I'm going to leave. I do that. I've done this a couple of times in our videos. I go, okay, see you later. Just kidding, like that. Anyway, it got to be a shtick on my StreamYard thing. I don't, but it's a private archive, so probably nobody's ever seen it. But now you'll see it now on Grantham Taylor Hughes show.
So Grantham, you've covered people are self-conscious that because they're going to appear it their picture's going to appear and or in front of people, and they're conscious about the way they speak. But what about the content? I think there's a factor in terms of being confident with the content, being confident about what you're speaking about, and
Hmm. Hmm. Well, I mean, everybody is filled with thoughts. Okay. So then you have to be able to articulate the thought in such a manner that would make sense logically. So that's the trouble. It's like if your thoughts are very jumbled, that's why I think that the yantra is very good for focusing your attention. It would make you a better public speaker too, because you're now focused more in terms of seeing your thoughts and slowing things down a bit. See, the problem is when your eyes are scattered, like the autistic people just, if you look at an autistic person, their eyes are moving around a lot and they're not paying attention. They trying to run away. You see what I mean? And I would say I work with autistic people because I was a corpsman in the Army Reserve years ago. So I used to work in hospitals. So I used to teach people, the autistic people, just look at me. It's okay to look at me and look at me right here in the middle of my forehead, and you can see both pupils. See, so if you look in the center, then you can look somebody directly in their eyesight, and then they're more comfortable with that. So I've taught a lot of those people to focus. So it's really in the eyesight again, and just like the yantra will help people to be a little I'm sorry, less self-conscious and more focused on their own thoughts. So that way, when you're a thoughtful person, you can pay attention to what you're thinking. You can articulate that too as well. Or like I say, if you pay attention to a group entity, words need to be said if it's your turn to say. Like you're taking your turn to speak, then you should have something to say, and you do because everybody has a stream of thoughts within them, a mindset, and they would like to do that, but they don't do it because again, it's jumbled up too much. So that the main subject is just clarity of your own thought, because you have many thoughts that you're thinking about. So just voice it. Start talking. The words will come to you if you're in practice with it. Like I've done this so many times. I've done hundreds and hundreds of lectures and Spotify. I did like 100 Spotifys. I did 650 shows on Blog Talk Radio years ago, which ironically went away recently. So I've done this an awful lot. So I'm very experienced at it. At the same time, you always can get better. And like just like I stammered around just a second ago, I don't mind stammering around. I don't want to be so polished professionally that I can't make an error occasionally. I don't mind making errors. I really don't, because it's just being human. A normal state of affairs is we make errors, and to err is human, as human, as Shakespeare said. And I think it's okay. But see, once you get used to your errors and it's okay, or if you've seen yourself on videos and you realize, hey, I'm not so bad. When you see your face on a video and if you speak a little bit, you're going to see that it's not so bad. So when we used to do videos of people, we used to hire people. I used to have a lot of corporations and things back in the day, and I delegated all that to other people, and the foundation work. But we used to take these videos of people, and then we'd show the video, and they were not as self-conscious. They were happy to see it because they looked okay, they sounded okay, and they got off the self-conscious thing. See, so that's a good thing to do. To go into the mirror will help you get rid of self-consciousness, by practicing that way. And then you can outflow and get in control of your stream of thoughts, you know. So I think it takes some discipline again, like the yantras are very good at disciplining your focus. I mean, the primary factor of the yantra is bringing wealth to you because it draws everything to you. The subroutine is it'll help your attention level a great deal. You see, I mean, that's a subroutine. Some people call that enlightenment, and I'm saying, well, I just think it's getting in an awareness of the attention of what we're saying in reference to be able to speak your mind. and you should be able to do that, but then people get nervous about who they're talking to, and that self-consciousness comes up again when you're dealing with the general public or society. Then people get kind of self-conscious with that, and they shouldn't. They just should be outflowing all the time, not very apprehensive. You know, people apprehension is a big problem in our life because we're apprehensive with other people because you don't know them or something. You don't know people, so you're kind of apprehensive. But that's why you have amenities. When you say hello, how's the weather, and you say, oh, it's really fine outside, yada yada, and you got about 10-second window, and then you're out of there if you don't know somebody. Because if you stop and talk to them, they think you're a lunatic or a homeless person, you know, which is kind of sad when you get right down to it. But a lot of those people have issues, mental issues, but their main issue is they just want to communicate with people. They want to have a conversation with somebody who will listen. A listening skill is something very important too as well. Just like I can communicate a lot, but I also am a very good listener. You know that. You know that I'll listen to you at length, and then most people will run out of gas in the communication. Then we said nurturing the conversation by asking more questions. And remember, we also said that our responsibility, if you're good and confident with your speech, then you need to go out and help other people to gain that confidence as well. So when I talk to people and they want to communicate and there's an interrupt cue, I back off. I let them talk and then nurture that discussion with them because they're trying to find their way into communication as well, just like I did many years ago. So anyway, it's just a matter of practice. Like I said, when the sculpture teacher of Michelangelo, he coined the three parts of art was practice, practice, and practice. So that's what it is. Practice makes perfect. I believe that. So the more that you do something, the better you get at it, or at least you're doing it. I don't know if I'm better at it, but I'm doing it. Let's put it that way. So in the doing, you have the ability to do it. See, and when you have the ability to do it, then you can do it for better or for worse. Okay? Just like the tone of my voice, I don't think so great, but I do it anyway. And I just let go of that a long time ago because my wife said, "Oh, you sound fine. Don't worry about it." See, and she's really good at it. She's a very critical person because she's a degree journalist and a really fine editor. So she's very much a flux in a hill pilificator. You like that one, folks? That's in a Geico commercial in America. I saw that term. They put it on a chalkboard on a TV commercial, Geico Insurance Company. I saw fluoxetine hillapilification. I was astonished because I had that in one of my lexicons. It means negative criticism, by the way. Negative criticism is two words. And they said, Grantham, why do you use the fluoxetine hillapilification? I said, because it's one word. I know, funny, right? All right. So everybody went and gassed out and went to sleep. So that means I can leave, right? Just kidding. So you have any questions there? Or did I run you to the end there? Okay, go ahead.
Well, it really struck me something you said earlier. You said words are very powerful because they create imagery in the minds of people. So it's a huge responsibility, isn't it? What we're talking about, what the words we use and what we say.
Yeah, there's a responsibility there, but most people are irresponsible with it. Yes, because that's what words do. I mean, but people really need to know that words are really just the power of the essence of what you are, and it's really like a flickering flame that you light up your intelligence within you. So that words are really lighting that up within you. So it's like a flicker. The words are flickering at the same time, in the logic patterns, they create imagery, like we were saying earlier about the table. When I say a table, you see an image of a table. See, it's a picture, And our minds work in images, not in words. We don't think in words, we think in pictures. A lot of people don't understand that. Because our awareness and our sight, we see things around us in our exoteric world, then you'll see imagery. So those imageries go on to the into the mindset and create the pictures within. So then what we do, we linearly try to articulate the pictures with our words. See, that's why words came into effect. We don't create imagery without having the word. They always say a picture's worth 1,000 words, or 1,000 words is worth a picture. So you reverse that phraseology. So that's why words are important. At the same time, you don't want to be so self-conscious again. You don't want to get into self-consciousness of not utilizing them. And sometimes it takes some study because I'm a well-read Ph.D. and I read thousands of books and what have you. At the same time, what's in those books? I've often said, what is a classic? Categorized as a classic, and you know what categorizes a classic is how much it's been read. Like the book, The Heart is a Lonely Hunter is a real negative book. It's about two deaf mutes. One dies, the other one commits suicide. That's just a real tragedy. I realize there's tragedies in the world, but remember we were saying emphasize the positive, eliminate the negative. I think it's better to go into the positive, even though I don't want to be coined as a positive thinker type, positive motivator type, even though I guess we're all a little bit on the motivator side in reference to trying to help people, especially in this idea of public speaking. But I'm just saying, just got to get out there and do it. Let go of all this apprehensions and communicate with people. Spend some time with people. Don't run away all the time. Don't do the thing but see, that's the problem with people in the labor camp. They're busy. They have to go back to work. They can't spend time having a conversation all day long. I understand that. That's why we're trying to make people rich through the yantra. You become financially independent through the yantra, then you have a lot of time on your hands. Now you can communicate with people. You can talk to people, spend time with people. This is a good thing to do because mainly you get to know your own self in that process. See, you can realize that you're okay and everybody is okay if you have space to allow them to make that their own connection. See, we don't need to change people. They change their own self if there's something wrong.
So how is it, Grantham, through speaking to other people that we get to know our own self, do you think?
Well, you make that connection in your thought patterns. I mean, everybody wants to think well of themselves and other people. Nobody wants really to do the negatives, but they do that for attention. See, people want a reaction out of people, just like profanity is a reactionary terminology because people react to it, you see? And that's why little children do that. They think it's funny, and they get a reaction, a charge out of somebody. And I don't think that's necessary. I think what's necessary is to give people truth, to communicate about what you consider or what you're really interpreting in the in life as truth, your own truth is individual truth, but individual truth can be a facsimile of other people's. It can get close in association. You can gain, like we were talking about friendship on the last video. How do you create a friendship? Is you are a good listener and you're a good speaker with people. You got to pay attention to them and appreciate what they're having to say and nurture that. You see, you nurture what people have to say on a particular subject and maybe help with a subject that maybe they don't know much about. But everybody has an expertise and they have a speciality when they're born. All right. Everybody has that. And remember, I said I believe in reincarnation. So we've had a lot of experiences from the past that we would like to communicate with other people, but we just don't do it because, again, these fears and all these things about maybe not knowing enough about a certain subject, but you can't find out things unless you practice it, see? Or you can't really know thyself in terms of communicating in the ninth sense of speaking if you don't make a effort with it. And then 7 and 8, we were talking about earlier about sense of humor being the sixth sense. 7 and 8 is reading and writing, and speaking is the ninth. Reading is the sixth, and seventh is writing because reading is easier than writing. Trust me. People think they can write, but they can't write. Beyond what they have predilection to make too many prepositional phrases. The uh, the Charter of the United Nations, they have sentences with 10 prepositional phrases. Microsoft will allow 3, and you can do more by programming it. But because if you do four prepositional phrase, you spun around in a circle, like to, from, around, about, and now you're back to the present. See, because a prepositional phrase is a prepositioning of your viewpoint. See, if you go three times, you triangulated something. Now you found the image. But if you go the fourth time, you come back to a circle. So believe it or not, in the Charter of the United Nations, they have sentences with 10 prepositional phrases. They spun around three times and back, zoom, spin around. I mean, it's ridiculous. So if they really knew grammar, and I'm a grammarian myself, but if you can get into that extensively too and just forget about it. I stop with dangling participles.
Can I go back to something you mentioned before?
Yeah, sure.
You said that everyone comes into this life with a speciality, and I'm assuming that's from a past life. So are you saying that when we're born, we have knowledge of this subject even before we got to the learning stages? You
Well, in
know,
the Bible, they call it talents. You have certain talents when you're, and those talents come from long repetition. Like Mozart was really good at music when he was younger, and I just really had a lot of repetition from previous existences. See, so I don't think it's anything grandiose. I just think repetition of certain subjects or certain skills that you repeated over and over again. So you come into a certain skill set when you're first born. There's a speciality that you have. And Maria Montessori found out years ago. She was taking young children off the streets and teaching them, lost children and what have you. She realized working with children, they had a certain skill set, a certain talent. She would nurture that talent. Like somebody might have a skill in math, somebody might have a skill in literature. So she would give books to the literary person and give numbers to the mathematician. She would nurture that talent. I thought, wow, that's fantastic, you see. But what we need to do is how you find your skill is you have to remember as a child what you were good at. Like I was an artist. I was supposed to be the next Rembrandt when I was younger, and because I was a really great artist and still am a great artist, but I turned into a writer and speaker because I'd rather do that. See, so what happens in life when you have a certain talent, you don't necessarily have to nurture that talent if you don't want to. You can get into any skill and become an expert in that skill by studying in that particular field. So you see, we have one when we're born, and we can remember as children what we were really good at. And that's easy to do. You find out what your talent was as a child. See, and if you want to nurture that, that's fine. If you want to change it, that's fine too. That's what life's about. There's many different subjects, many different avenues of study. You can get in, you can specialize in any of them or go horizontal with the whole thing, like I have. I've gone horizontal with a lot of different subjects because I've read so many different things. When I was younger, I was trying to read the most complex books that I could find. I realized that they always have a simple thread that run through them. And when you find that methodology, then you become an expert in the field. It's not hard to do if you read things and you realize there's a common thread that runs through something. The spiritualists talk about it being the golden thread of truth through all subjects. So when you find that thread, then you can run with it. See, it's just a comprehension. Most of these subjects are about a certain set jargon, a certain language that they have and specialties. Like we were talking about allopathic medicine, you have 8 years of medical school, and they have certain jargon that they talk about within their group of people. Their enclave of people will know what they're talking about. But if you haven't studied their jargon, see, jargon is a certain set language and a certain subject. But to me, it's just ridiculous because there's a thread that runs through things. A lot of highly specialized people can't cross-reference and talk to each other. I knew a journalist years ago who were interviewing two scientists at different fields, and they couldn't talk to each other because they didn't know how to communicate about each one of them were so highly specialized. So that's ridiculous. If you can't horizontally communicate with people, just like amenities, hi, how are you, and you get down to cases to be able to have a decent conversation with people. See, it's not hard to do if you slow yourself down, look somebody in the eye, see what they're thinking about, and stay with that. Communicate with them about what you see with them. You look at somebody, if they're paying attention, they're comprehending what you're saying, then it has value to them, and they may listen at length, and then you know what I'll do with that. I'll just pass out after a while. He will fall asleep. He can talk for not 24 hours. He can talk for 16 and sleep for 18 hours. You mean he talked for 16 straight hours? Yes, he did. But then he fell asleep. Thank goodness.
Okay, Grantham. Thank you very much. Time for you to sleep.
Lullaby and good night. Go
So,
to sleep, little baby. Oh, go ahead.
sleep well,
Thank you
Grantham.
very much.
And thank you to the viewers. Thanks for watching. Please share, like, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Bye for now.